Podcasts.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Games Explain podcasts. We're your hosts,
Dan.
Ben.
and Matt. And we're going to edit that so it sounds like we're coordinated. How this podcast works is first we talk about games we've been playing recently, and then we talk about our topic of today, which today is action cue games. Ooh, that sounds so technical.
That's so secretive.
And then we talk about games that could exist but probably don't. So, what have you been playing lately?
I have been playing Hanabi, which is super fun. And in Hanabi, the fun part of that game is that you don't know what your cards are.
What?
So you all have to hold your cards backwards.
What?
So you can't see your cards.
Is it like headbands, but more than one card?
Yes. Exactly that. Your hand is facing outwards. And we did a video on this, so feel free to take a look at that. But the gist of the game is that you have all these cards that represent fireworks. There's 5 different colors in the deck, and as a team, you should be card counting to try and figure out where everything is. So the cards are numbered in each color from 1 to 5. There's 3 ones of each color. There's 2 of each of the following numbers, 2, 3, and 4 of each color, and there's 1 5. And you want to try and in solitaire fashion, go from the number 1 and then put the number 2 on top of that, and then number 3 on top of that in each color until you get to 5 in each color, which is very hard to do. I think the most I've gotten recently is like 18. But you hold your hand outwards, and you have a certain number of clues that you can give. So I'm looking around the table at all the other players. It's 2 to 5 players, I believe. I look at all the other players, and I have to give them clues about their cards in their hands so they know what to play. And I can only give 2 types of clues. I can point to certain cards in their hand and tell them that is a particular color. So say, Matt, you're holding a hand of 4 cards and you have 3 red. 3 of them are red, like a red 2, a red 5, and a red 1. I can point to those 3 cards and say, these are red. But that's as far as my clue can go. The second type of clue that you can give is the number on the card. So let's say you also had a blue 5. I can say, maybe on Ben's turn, he'll say, Matt, you have 2 5s, and he'll point out those 2 5s. So now you know completely the information of one of those cards in your hand. You have a red 5. But other than that, you know that you have 2 red cards, and you have 1 other card that's not the red cards, that's a 5. And so you're learning information about your own cards, and you're having to play them onto the table blind, I use in quotes, because you're using educated guesses based on the clues you've been given, how many cards are left in the deck, and how many are in the discard pile, etc. You make 3 mistakes, and you lose. All your fireworks blow up. Did I say it was about fireworks? It's about fireworks. You have to make fireworks.
I think that's Japanese for fireworks.
Yeah, I think so. It's fun trying to get inside the minds of other people, because there's definitely, like, you give each other clues about what's in your hand, but it's definitely about the subtext. And at least the way that I've been playing it, like mild table talk is permissible.
What?
Like, not like, for example, maybe we only need 1 more 1. So then I tell Ben, you have a 1 in your hand, but maybe I say it as serious as that. You have a 1. And then he's like, oh, this is probably the 1 that's left, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you have to like try and understand, why did somebody give me this particular clue at this particular time? Yeah. Or why am I not getting clues? Is it because the cards in my hand? And the economy of the game is that you can discard a card forever to get another clue to give away to someone. And so people might not be giving you clues about your cards because all of them are disposable and you could discard any of them and there'd still be enough to complete the game. Or they might not be giving you clues because clues are a precious resource and they've been giving them to other people.
Yeah, it's just not relevant yet. Yeah.
Yeah. So I imagine that if you play this game enough with the same group of people, over time you will have a perfect game because you'll know how everybody thinks, and when you give each other a clue, it's like this is the reason why they gave me this particular clue at this particular time.
Have you gotten the top score in that game yet?
No, I have not. As far as my memory serves, that score of 18 is the best I've ever done, which is not that great.
Oh,
if 25 is a perfect score.
Oh.
I mean that game is pretty tough to like even win. Never mind get a good score. So
yeah, that's true.
That's fair. Yeah.
Thanks for encouraging me.
Good job.
My pleasure.
Yep. What about you, Matt?
Oh man! So many years ago, there was a Kickstarter by Calliope Games, which I did not know how to pronounce until 1 minute ago when I looked it up on the internet during this podcast.
Calliope. We got a lot of hard words to say on this podcast.
Calliope. Well, yeah, lots of Japanese words. Lots of. Is this Greek? Is that like a Grecian person?
Yeah, probably.
It's a name. I don't know. Whatever. Calliope. They had a Kickstarter where they got a whole bunch of game designers together and said, we don't know what these games are yet, but give us a whole bunch of money and we'll get all these designers to make some games and you'll choose the ones that you think are cool after like a couple of years. So it's been a couple of years, and so we got a big dump of games, and we've played 2 of the like 6 so far. So I'm talking about one of them, which is ShipShape. And I like this game because it's quite unique, and it's nice that it's a pretty physical game. How it works is there's a whole bunch of flat pieces that are stacked in the center, and parts of it are cut out. So it's a 3x3 grid, and some of those are solid and some of those are empty space that lead so you can look down to the next piece. And so each person will take those and they'll put them in their ship's hull, and they can flip it or rotate it however they want, but it will cover up some of the spaces that are already there. And after you've placed 3 of these, you look down and see what's uncovered, and that's your points. So you have to... Oh, and there's another layer to it. There's 2 more layers. So one layer is you're bidding for who takes the top piece on that stack. So within a round, each person is going to take one, but someone will take the top, someone will take the next one, someone will take the next one. And so you're doing a blind bid. So you have cards numbered 1 to 10, and so everybody puts a card in, you flip them, whoever has the highest. If there's a tie, then those tied people are booted out and they have to bid again. So if there's a tie for 10, and one person's like, I really don't. If there's 3 people playing, 2 people bid 10, one person bids 1. The person who bid 1 is going to take the top one, even though they really don't want it, and that's why they bid a 1.
Wow.
And it's nice because you can't like pick up the stack and look underneath. There's only a little bit of visibility based on what's on top. So if you're playing with like 5 people, there's a lot of mystery about what the fifth card down has on it, because it's probably most of it's covered by the solid pieces of the cards above it. So it's like the spatial reasoning. You're looking at the card on the top, and you're like, okay, if I just flip that and put it and rotated it, it would cover that. And so it gets that like spatial part of your mind going. And then the third layer is the things that are uncovered. It's not just like gold equals victory points or something. It's there's gold, which is just straightforward. It's a currency. The number that's showing, that's the number you get. And then there's contraband, which is exactly the same, except whoever got the most gets nothing. And then there's another one, which is whoever had the least, that number is subtracted from everyone's score for that type of item. So if one person had 0, everybody gets their score, and it was normal. If one person had 4 and everyone else had 5, the 4 person gets nothing, and all that 5s are worth 1. So there's a few different layers. You're like, it matters a little bit what other people are going for. So you're like, oh, that person got 10 contraband because they couldn't do anything about it. They just had to take 10 contraband. So you can go up to 9, and that's no problem within a round. And then there's a few rounds to the game, so you get to do this a few different times. but it's a nice like there's a little bit of bidding. It matters a little bit what other people are doing. There's like spatial reasoning. It's really nice. Ship I love it.
Yeah, it sounds super cool.
And that does sound really cool. Do you find that some of those elements that are really different from each other? I mean, it sounds like from how you're describing it that this is not the case, but with so many different parts, it feels like it might subtract from the whole. But it sounds like they do the opposite. They add together to something much cooler together than they would be on their own. Like
definitely
these different elements.
Definitely. And then there's a little bit of rubber banding mechanics.
Yes.
So if you had the highest score in a round, then you take the ship with the highest score for the next round, which means it has a whole bunch of rats at the bottom of the hull that are worth negative points. And so you want to cover them up because they eat gold or something.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a pretty quick game. It doesn't take you could play with kids and it'd be fine. It's a little bit of addition and subtraction. And it's some spatial reasoning. Just a nice game overall. Yeah.
Nice.
Well, in Greek mythology, Calliope is the muse who presides over eloquence and epic poetry.
There you go.
Interesting. Nice.
Epic poetry.
Beep.
So I've been playing, I've played this game once recently that I thought was pretty interesting. It's got some physical, spatial stuff to it too. The game's called River Dragons. And the idea is that you are some folks that are living near this river and you're trying to cross to the opposite side of the river. And everyone's starting at different parts of the river and you're trying to get across. And you have to place stepping stones throughout the river, and then you can place planks between the stepping stones. And so you have to get a nice bridge all the way across and then walk across your bridge to get to the other side. And so since everybody is starting in different parts of the river, you are having to try and get past each other on these bridges and share the bridges that you've created. And each person starts off with, I think it's 6 different planks. Each one is just slightly longer. There's no units written on them. They're numbered, so everyone has the same length as everyone else. But when you're choosing to lay a plank down, you have to choose the plank that you're playing and then reach out and then hope that the one that you picked is still long enough to reach across the 2 stones that you want to put it across.
Because still long enough? Like what would have changed between you choosing and you placing it?
You don't get to measure it up to the stepping stones are the board is not like a grid. It's just there's different places where you can put the stones, and then there's different places where you can put the planks between those stones.
How big is this board?
It's like a normal board game thing. The sticks are only like
finger length or something.
Basically, yeah. Like the shortest one is a little bit shorter, and the longest one is a little bit longer. But they're all kind of in a similar range. Yeah.
So you don't get to line it up. Can you put your finger on the board and measure it and then bring your finger back and see which stick fits?
I think that's allowed. I didn't actually read the rule book myself, so I'm not 100% sure. So that might be a house rule thing, whether or not you're allowing that sort of thing. But yeah, one other thing that was really interesting about this game is that it is an action cue game where everybody at the start of the turn, they have their deck of cards. I think there's 14 cards in your deck, something like that. So everyone gets to choose between all the actions they have available, and they get to choose 5 of them, lay them all out. And once everyone's picked their 5 actions for the round, then you start flipping them over one at a time. And then people carry out their actions. So your actions consist of laying down stones, laying down planks, moving across your bridges, trying to leapfrog somebody. What else is there? You can remove planks or remove stones from anywhere on the map. Or you can play a dragon card to attack a specific villager. Yeah, so what you're trying to do is you might just focus mainly on what you're trying to do to achieve your goals and get across, but someone else might then take out one of your planks and you're forced to you've already committed to walking forward, but now a plank's been removed, so you have to walk backwards instead. And so you have to keep in mind all these different things as you're laying out your moves for each turn. So
Do you have access to all your available actions on any turn?
Yeah, every round you have your full deck that you have access to. So
I see.
That means that everybody knows that you could do anything, and so you have to be ready to counter everything as well.
The fact that there's dragons in it alone makes me want to play it.
It's pretty great. Yeah,
It seems like the dragon is like such a small part of
that's
it.
true.
it kind of is, but like when you play a dragon on somebody, the attack that it does is it cancels that action for that round, that part of the round. So if you're being very careful to like, okay, I'm placing a stone, now I'm placing a plank, now I'm walking forward, and now I'm walking forward on someone else's plank. If you canceled their placing a plank, then they can't walk forward, and then they can't do that second walk forward either. And so that's completely changed their whole trajectory, right?
You can mess up their whole action queue.
So yeah, playing that dragon to cancel someone else's turn is, in some ways, it's kind of a gamble because it's also effectively wasting your own action because you can't make any meaningful progress along the way. But if you know that you're the one that's leading the pack and you think other people are going to be attacking you anyway, then you might as well start attacking other people. So, yeah.
Well, speaking of action cues, ding, 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 ding. That's our word of the day.
Yeah.
I guess it's 2 words. It's our word. It's our noun clause of the day.
So tell us about this noun clause. What is an action Q, and what differentiates it from an action R, an action S, action T?
No, it's not the letter Q. It's Q-U-E-U-E, the most redundantly spelt word in the English language.
So what's the difference between an action Q and a pool cue?
A pool cue is for playing the board game
also
billiards.
The board game. Perfect. Yeah, that is a different cue, isn't it? All right, tell me about the action queue. I'll shut my yap.
Yeah, so an action queue game is just like with River Dragons. You have a set of actions that you can play in a round, and you have to pre-select a number of them in a row, and they'll all be executed in sequence later on. And you have little to no control once those actions have been selected.
Mm-hmm. Some examples of games like this would be Walk the Plank, which we have a video for. If you go to YouTube and you search Games Explained Channel, you'll find it. And Robo Rally, which I just love talking about all the time, and we're going to talk about it some more. Or Colt Express, which is well known as the game where you get to make a train.
Like you get to physically construct a train as part of the setup.
It's so important. It's so important.
Yeah, that is actually one of the things that draws me to that game. I don't think I've actually ever played it, but I've been drawn to it for that reason alone.
People like physical stuff. Yeah.
I will say, so the big thing about these action Q games, from my experience, and my experience is, from what I can think of, is Walk the Plank and Robo Rally, is that deciding your actions is really just half of it, because when your actions are decided, like you said, other players have decided to do things too, and their choices will interact with you, and that will therefore mess up your plans, unless you can somehow anticipate what it is that they're going to do to mess you up, and you incorporate their messing you up into your plan,
or you play it safe. Like in Robo Rally, you can say, I'm just going to run into this wall for 5 turns because I know no one can mess me up.
That's totally true. And the thing about these games that I find hilarious is that a lot of the things that end up happening are so ridiculous. Like, for example, in Walk the Plank, you're running around in one dimension, basically, to and from a ship out onto its plank, and you're sawing off the plank, and you're pushing people around, and you're trying to be the last pirate surviving. And if somebody pushes your pirate forward and you didn't anticipate being one step forward, suddenly you're like pushing your friends into the water instead of the enemies. And like that would just be something completely stupid to do. But that game's fiction chalks it up to all the pirates being totally dumb, and therefore the pirate captain is trying to whittle down his crew to the smartest people, which I think is a hilarious way to make the fiction of the action Q games, like doing something that you didn't intend to do, make sense. And then, of course, Robo Rally is like programming And so if something interrupts your program, then, well, I've already pressed play on my program.
Mhm.
So this is just what the program is designed to do, but now somebody has gotten in the way. So that fiction also makes sense with this action queue kind of game. And that's something that I'm very interested in, how these other games explain how action queue works for why their characters do the things that they do and such.
I think they might not.
Yeah,
So
River
Cold
Dragons,
Express.
it's a little less clear why you're queuing up a bunch of things. I mean, you could argue like I got to carry my stones, my planks out there or whatever. Why you have to step backwards some steps? I don't know. But it's. But one of the nice things about River Dragons as an action queue game is your actions are preset, but not how you follow through on those actions. So with Robo Rally, like you're playing forward, turn left, forward, reverse, whatever. That's what you do, and there's no ambiguity there. And with River Dragons, you're saying I'm playing a stone. It doesn't matter. Like you can play a stone anywhere. I'm playing a plank. I can play a plank anywhere, right? So you still have some control over the chaos that's been caused. That's one thing that like the chaos is part of what's really fun about some action queue games, but that's also what's really frustrating to some players. And so having some control over the outcome of that chaos can help players still feel like the game is, somewhat fair.
I really like action queue games because it can still give you those moments where it's like rolling a 20 in Dungeons and Dragons where like you can't believe that happened. Like
for sure.
the odds were so rare, but that happens because it's a choice you made. So when you're queuing it up, you're like, okay, it's Colt Express. I'm going to walk to the top. I'm going to shoot my gun. Maybe someone's there. Maybe someone's not. I'm going to go back down. I'm going to shoot my gun again. And I don't really know what's going to happen. And then when you get to the top and you shoot and there happens to be someone there, and then you go down and they also went down and you shoot them again, then what are the odds that they would make these like coinciding decisions? And so you still get those big moments, even though no one's rolling dice. It's true what you're saying, Ben, in that you can't play action queue games like it's a deep strategy game.
Yeah.
You get a little bit of that. You can say, oh, I know this person's robot in Robo Rally wants to get to the flag, so probably they're going to get on this conveyor belt. I should dodge it. But that's about it. And I love it. I love it for that.
I'm going to go off on a slight tangent here, and in some ways the game 6 Nimmt feels to me like an action queue game of one action, because
of one action.
and you can deny me this, but I will still say that it at least feels that way, because like in 6 Nimmt, you do not want to be the person who plays the sixth card in a row of cards, or else you take points. When I make my decision about what card to play, it goes in a particular order. We all play our card at the same time, and so I might be the first person to go. I might be the 10th person to go if there's 10 people playing, and so I can't anticipate how full this row will be, or if I will be the person to take it if I play like a super high number. So I always think about like, I think I do better when there's more people in that game than less, because I don't know what, I can like average out what people are going to do in my mind, and I like try and play around like the status quo. Like probably the general thought is people want to go in this mostly empty row, so I'm going to play something that would be ridiculously high that would go in after somebody takes it or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
My card is lined up in a queue of other cards to place in there. I'm just hoping that I'm not the one that happens to be the person who's taking a bunch of points, which you don't want in that game, just in case you didn't know.
Yeah, 6 Nimmt is basically an action queue game. Nice.
Yes. I've played 3 action queue games then.
So those are some action queue games we have played and do exist. What kind of action queue games do you wish existed? I'm thinking of Risk, but it's action queue. So instead of rolling dice, you just have a big list of like one of your armies is going to attack to the east, and you laid out those plans, and you're going to attack east.
I wonder if that would make Risk a faster game, like because if that randomness would average out and allow, like normally Risk you've got amassed huge armies at the border between two people's territories, and you're just kind of slowly moving back and forth, and it's just a law of attrition sort of thing. But if you've got some randomness to it, where like, oh shoot, I thought this was going to be over out here, but it wasn't, then you're going to lose some of your strength there, and that might help actually move the game along a little bit. It's interesting.
Yeah, like if you're going back and forth on a territory, and then one player decides, on this round, I'm just going to play nothing there, and they just get spread thin in your territory, that'd be sweet. What if Checkers was an action queue game?
Like, what are the different kinds of things that you would do? Like, would you have new kinds of actions that you could do in Checkers?
It could be you want to move on this diagonal axis or this diagonal axis.
Mm-hmm.
And then so you just play 5 moves in advance, or establish 5 moves in advance before. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Oh, man. Yeah. That'd be fairly hilarious.
So one interesting element of the action queue is that it allows everybody to spend all of their, strategizing time simultaneously. And so no one's sitting around waiting for someone else to figure out their strategy. So with that Risk example that Matt gave, it might be, a lot quicker to play there because people know exactly or everyone's thinking at the same time and then playing their result at the end. So I know other games like that are like Dominion. If you're playing a lot of drawing cards and action forking actions, then you can end up with turns that last, a couple minutes, and then everyone else that's at the table is just getting super bored about what's going on. So if you can adapt some of these games that have some of these long wait times into games that you can actually play 1, maybe even 2 turns in advance and just kind of keep that hidden, and then reveal it, and maybe there is some chaos that gets revealed as an outcome there with, buying extra cards. And Dominion is the one thing where people interact or attack each other or whatever. Yeah, there could be just interesting outcomes there.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I also think that in games, like the more players, certainly I'm sort of thinking tangentially here, but in games where you have more players, you want to reduce turn time as much as possible, right? Like, so for example, in 6 NIMT, you can go up to 10 players, but your turn all happens at the same time. And Dominion can be up to 6 players with expansions, but like, especially for newer people or for expansions that use a lot of action cards where you're going through like your whole deck every turn, that can really eat up time. And yeah, if there was a way to play games like that with complicated actions with lots of people, but do it at the same time and do it in such a way that you can still keep track of things and not get lost in your turn order and everything like that, I think that would be a real benefit. I think the thing that tickles me the most about action queue games is that thing that I mentioned before about the fictional reason as to why ridiculous things happen in the game. And I love Robo Rally and Walk the Planks reasons. And I would love for games to continue to find creative reasons as to why, if you queue something up for your character to do and they do it in spite of this character doing this other thing, what would have prompted somebody to have done that thing?
Oh, I guess it could be anything where you start an action, but there's quite a bit of delay before it happens. So maybe all the players are on different mountaintops and they're rolling boulders down, and we'll see what ends up at the bottom.
Oh, that's cool. I like that.
Like your Risk example, there's the the idea of that game is that it's happening, kind of in the past when there wasn't telecommunications that could be instantaneously communicated, right? So you're trying to relay your orders for your troops at the front lines, but it might take a few days for the orders to actually show up. And so by the time it shows up, the whole situation's completely changed.
Like you've got a micromanaging king with a bunch of messengers on horses.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it.
Yeah.
I was thinking almost the exact same thing as you, Ben, except like a space version, or like a satellite. Like how there's like what is it? Isn't there like 8 minutes of delay of communication between us and something on Mars, for example, like a probe on Mars? So like, maybe you're telling a probe on Mars to go do something, and you're telling it to move forward this amount and then turn this way. But then by the time you've gone your certain distance, you realize there's a giant volcanic ravine and you have to move, but it's too late.
Well, that introduces an interesting idea too, is that like the delay going from one location to another might be different than going to a different location, right? So going to Mars or from Earth would be different than from Earth to Jupiter, say. And so maybe at the closer planets, your queue would be shorter and you'd get to the end faster. But there might be bigger rewards if you go those longer distances, right? And you build up a longer queue.
Oh, that is great. I'm like inspired to start making a game right now, frankly.
I know. Something else that can be cool about that is with most of these action queue games we've talked about, like everyone puts down 5 cards and then everyone resolves all 5 cards. With something like that, with that delay, it could be everyone puts down a card and then everyone resolves the card at the end of the queue, right? So you are feeding things into the back as you're dealing with things out of the front, and instead of trying to deal with a whole bunch in a row. So there's still a little bit of that element of chaos, but you can react to things not necessarily quicker, but you can actually, in some ways, that would actually be slower because you're adding things to the queue before the entire queue has been resolved. Yeah, I feel like that could be really interesting.
If players had different queue lengths, so every 3 turns you redo your queue, but every 5 turns I redo my queue because I have a character that has different advantages or something. Like to stagger those, that could be interesting.
The next thing that came to mind with queues, although this would probably make for a less exciting board game, is I find that probably once a month when I send things into a queue in my work printer, I accidentally put like an extra 0 at the end of something.
Oh no!
And so when I leave the queue to the print queue to do its thing, it does something very, very terrible that I wish I could have stopped. I would love to see someone make an office printer board game where you're sending things in a queue to a printer and somehow make that exciting and interesting to play.
You can play like attack cards on someone else's queue. You can say like, "Oh, this is a printer jam. Like this one that like this action that I don't know about yet is canceled, or this one happens 10 times or whatever." Yeah.
You could play as an internet router sending packets.
Oh, I love it. Hey man, if you can make a game about a panda farm or whatever that was, you can make a game about that.
Totally.
Well, that's all we've got for you today, talking about action queues and games we've enjoyed. So thanks for tuning in. If you want to hear more of this, you can find us at Games Explained channel on YouTube, or you can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. Tune in next time when you hear us talk about space. Is it close or is it far?
There's so much of it.
There's just so much. See you next time.
Bye.